Well, hey, happy birthday.
Thank you. It's actually tomorrow, Monday the
Yeah,
31st.
but nobody knows that because you just said it.
And we celebrate our birthdays the whole weekend.
Yes, that's true. So if you were a member of my household when it's your birthday, it's the whole weekend.
Right. We don't know what other people do in America, but in our household, when it's your birthday,
Your birthday.
the whole weekend.
You get to listen to what you want to on the radio.
Watch what you want to on TV.
You get to eat what you want to watch.
and
eat
you
what
get
you
to
want to watch.
and you get to eat as much as you want too.
Yes.
So, I've
The
been.
Mexicans call me El Gordo.
Oh no, they don't. They should not. You're not El Gordo. You're very
Nice.
handsome, Smoochie.
Oh, thank you.
So yes, I have. I had a sugar cookie yesterday, which made me very happy. We had
What'd you think of those little spring
the
rolls?
spring rolls were amazing.
They looked
So
weird.
good.
It looked like it reminded me of like a lamb condom. That was encased
Okay,
in.
that doesn't sound very appetizing.
I saw it and I'm like, I can't.
Okay,
eat that.
so for everybody who doesn't know, there's a restaurant here in America called Tokyo Joe's, and it's a Japanese restaurant.
Tojo.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Anyhow, it is
I can
supposed
say
to be.
that I'm part samurai.
It is supposed to be a take on Tokyo Rose, but the food is.
Where'd you read that at?
I just know that about the restaurant. So, come on now.
It's like propaganda.
Tokyo Rose was propaganda,
Yes,
but
Tokyo
the
Joe's.
food is called Tokyo Joe's, so it's a play on words. So it's Japanese food, but it's in a very casual setting. And so one of the appetizers is spring rolls. Now, Jeremy was a little unfamiliar with what an authentic spring roll would be. So he thought it would basically be an egg roll with, like batter on the outside. But it has rice paper on the outside. So that's the casing.
Weird.
And then it was filled with a variety of different vegetables and then diced chicken and served with a side of soy ginger sauce. It was so good.
Anyways, let's cut to the chase. This is like the biggest intro ever
I
to
know.
the video.
I know.
We just saw the movie Patton. Have you ever seen it before?
I had never seen it before, but my dad watched it every time it was on TV when I was growing up.
I've never seen Patton before. I remember as a kid, I knew the music, that iconic
Right.
where they fade in and out
Right.
with the trumpeting of whatever.
Yes. And I've had some people in my family who served in the military. Both grandfathers, my grandfather on my mom's side and on my dad's side, both served in the military. And so, we absolutely support our military, and I love studying World War II, in particular the Holocaust. So when I was a kid growing up, I would always see my dad watch Patton, and I was too young. He never allowed me to watch it because of the swearing. Because when you watch it, it's not a particularly gory film.
No, no, it wasn't. 1970 maybe, but
Right. There was only that one scene
where the dude was missing a foot.
when they were leading up to the Battle of the Bulge, where there was a little bit of gore, but
But
by
it-
today's
It
standards,
looked fake.
It
It
looked
looked
fake.
cartoon gore or something. Like
But back then, you figure it came out in 1970 and I was born in 71. So as a small child, that probably would have scared me. But I think the language was why he didn't allow me to watch it as a kid. But I used to be so jealous when he would watch it because I always loved history. And I so wanted to watch it. And I don't know why it's taken me so long to finally get around to watching it, but it's on Netflix. And so it's my birthday weekend and we got to watch it.
was there anything about the movie that surprised you?
This is going to be not about the story or about the plot. This is just kind of basic general movie information. I was surprised that it was rated PG as opposed to rated R because of the language. And in America, we have a rating system that basically starts off as G, which is, animated films, anything that is very, very kid-friendly, and then PG, which is generally, friendly to the whole family, and then PG-13, which kind of is supposed to be for teens and up, and then rated R, which is supposed to be adults. But when Patton came out, there was no PG-13. It was PG and R. And so the only thing that kept it from being R was that they didn't use the F word. And so, but they used other swearing. They used other, bad language. So I was surprised that it was PG. I was surprised there wasn't a lot of gore. And I was surprised. I thought that it would focus more on the war, but it was actually really more of a story about Patton himself. I really liked it.
I would say two things surprised me about it. I mean, obviously, I knew who Patton was as a kid, and I knew of some of his war conquests that you would hear because it was Americana. It's part of our history.
And he was a 4-star general, which one of the greatest generals in our country's history.
I didn't realize he was crazy.
I didn't either. I didn't either.
Dude was a genius and crazy mixed together.
Which often happens, by the way.
And it was just like, dude is crazy. I'm really surprised nobody fragged him, which is shooting your commander in the back during war.
Today that might happen.
I was also surprised at the treatment of the Russians in the film.
Oh, I was going to add one other thing, not about that. So you go first, and then
I was surprised. I was waiting for when we, as soon as and you know how my tastes have changed in movie viewing and whatnot, and being familiar now a little bit with Russian film. As soon as I saw the dancing, I realized they're with the Russians.
Right.
Like, oh, this ought to be interesting to see. Let me kind of glean in and see if I notice anything that I typically wouldn't have before.
Right.
Number one, I noticed the dancing, the acrobatic dancing, the male dancing.
Right.
And then I saw the women of World War II, and it was like, were they the night witches? Were they, all quiet here on the Western Front? Well, they all died, or that's the wrong movie.
And that's
the
the wrong
Dawns
war.
here are always quiet.
All quiet on the Western Front.
Yes,
World War I.
But they all
Great
died.
book, too, by the way.
Yeah, I think they all died. I thought maybe there was one survivor. I don't. Anyways, but I was like, oh, here's a piece of history. I see that, and I see the general next to Patton, and I'm hoping it's Zhukov, and it's not. I wasn't familiar with who he was, and but what really surprised me, and well, I guess it shouldn't surprise me because the Cold War was beginning.
That's exactly
in World War II.
Right.
Is Patton seemed to be a big problem with this. Like when you see the celebration there, and the Russians are not being, I don't think, being pretentious at all. I think they're trying to be hospitable and sharing this victory. And you can tell Patton's there. He wants to fight. Matter of fact, we get to the scene in the movie where he has a big argument and kind of gets demoted out of all this because he wants to go kick Russia's butt back into Russia, and he was making his plea about, just let me do it. I'll make it look like they started it, and then we'll come and we'll finish it, and we'll have them back in Russia where they belong. I was completely surprised by that because I don't know, I pictured that this film would just be about American exploits, because typically what we have with the American war films is America and the Nazis. You know what I mean? There was a lot of British in here that I was surprised at that we normally don't get to see with General Montgomery or Marshal Montgomery.
It was General, but he was in there because of his particular interplay with Patton. So that's why he was so heavily focused on. But a couple of things you have to remember about that. First off, the movie was made in 1970. Made in 69, released in 70.
Me too.
That is correct. Very
yes,
good.
I was made in
Good
69,
job.
released in 1970.
Technically, you were actually made
don't do
in
that.
70 because
Yeah, okay. You just messed up the whole joke.
yeah, because of when you were born. So, anywho, if you remember, that's 25 years after the end of World War II. That's not a long period of time. The Cold War was very thick in 1970. And again, the movie is about Patton.
Yeah.
So it's not about the entire war. It's not about all of the generals. It's not. It's a snapshot in time about one particular general, and there is no secret that he was not a fan of the Russians. But it's also not a secret that there were many Russians that were not a fan of the Americans either. So that shouldn't be a surprise at all.
Well, when we have that one interplay in the film where he makes an off-the-cuff comment, and he doesn't include Russia in the Allies.
Right. He didn't say anything about
Yes,
Russia.
and
It's just that he didn't mention them.
Yeah, and I think just my exposure to Russian film and Russian culture, I think that they're a sensitive people about things like that, because I think from their point of view, to them it feels like the world has been against them since the beginning of time, and I could completely see in the film watching that how they would take it that way, and I was really surprised, really surprised when we had that scene with Patton and the other Russian general, that there wasn't more of an offense by the Russians, like because he didn't want to drink with them, and he made that comment about the general being a son of a bee.
Well, I think you're misunderstanding what happened there. I think that what he was doing was actually something, it was a psychological tactic. I'm going to say this thing to see what response I get, and if I get the response I'm looking for, then all is well. And he got exactly the response he was looking for, and what did he do then?
He drank with them.
He smiled,
yeah.
and he drank with them, because that was the response he was looking to get. He was trying to see, is there somebody on the other side of this table who is like me, who is like-minded with me, somebody who is a warrior among warriors, someone who war is in my blood because I care about defending my homeland. That's what he was looking for on the other side. And so our cultures are two very different cultures. Mm-hmm. So when he's sitting there and he's watching the celebration that's going on, that looks very different than what an American celebration would look like. Very different. And so if you put the shoe on the other foot, if a Russian was sitting there watching an American celebration, he probably would look somewhat similar. Like, I'm not sure exactly what this is that I'm looking at, and I don't know what really to say here. And so what he might do is the same thing that Patton did, which was, I'm going to make this comment, and I'm going to see what response I get. And if I get the response I hope for, then yes, we are partners, we are comrades, and that's what he found.
I think that this film, I mean, it was good
for the time, yeah.
But it completely dated.
Oh, absolutely.
The set, I mean, some of it looked like it was like, sometimes if you go in older Bollywood films, you're like, dude, they're on a sound stage.
Right.
That is a painted background.
Right.
Like, I think that this is really kind of, and we'll jump into this with the next video. I think this story, this movie is ripe for like a Christopher Nolan to step in and do Patton.
Some of the scenes that you were talking about that looked soundstagey,
like
there were some areas where it was very obvious, they have filmed this in an area that is supposed to look like, Northern Africa. But in fact, it was Spain. And there were other parts that were filmed in Italy because that's where it was supposed to be. And so the outside shots looked breathtaking and spectacular. But some of the backdrops, and again, this was filmed in 1969, looked very similar to the backdrops in White Christmas. Remember that movie where at the very beginning they're also supposed to be in World War II, and they're
probably were,
and they're having a kind of a rest and a bit of entertainment, and they're waiting for their general to get there. Do you remember how cheesy that backdrop looked?
Yes.
Some of the backdrops in Patton looked that way, and yet it was like 30 years. It was
Right.
made 30 years later,
Right.
Or 20 years later, or whatever. And so I was a bit surprised at that. So.
But I mean, it was a good movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, and it was very true to form as far as Patton's character. A lot of the things they had him say were direct quotes. And again, you could see the genius of the man. He was a brilliant strategist.
And you could also see the craziness.
You could see the crazy.
The dude was constantly telling his superiors,
yes,
I fought with the Egyptians, dude.
I fought
with
in
the
Israelites.
War.
Come on. Right.
I'm reincarnated.
I fought with Napoleon, and it's
come on,
no.
What are you doing?
No, you didn't.
Somebody kill him.
So he was a bit, touched with that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But he was a brilliant strategist. And you could see also some of the Nazis, and this was true too.
Yeah, the Nazis were
This was
sweating them.
absolutely true. They knew that some of Hitler's generals were way smarter than he was. And they knew, just based on their study of Patton, we can tell you with some certainty, a great deal of certainty, he's going to do this. Mm-hmm. But they took everything from Hitler, and Hitler said, no, you do this, and so you can see He did the same thing when it came to Russia, though. They warned him and warned him about going to fight and what the winter would do to him and what it would do to the troops. And there were generals that he basically told, if you surrender, you may as well just kill yourself because you're going to fight until I say so. And they knew there was no way that they could win, and yet he told them to do it anyway.
And I think, too, if you look at this film in the entirety of World War II, I think because you had Zhukov doing some things on the Russian front that was, I think, were just completely brilliant. You have Patton doing things in Germany that were brilliant.
Right.
You as much as I didn't like the character of Montgomery,
Right.
boy, he chased that Desert Fox all around two continents, just like mopping this guy.
Oh, and one thing that they didn't touch on, again, because it wasn't, about the totality of World War II, it was about Patton specifically, but the Desert Fox, Erwin Rommel, he ended up being part of the plot to
Valkyrie.
Assassinate Hitler in July of 1944, and so he ended up getting killed by the SS.
Which is a good movie, too, the Valkyrie.
Yeah, great movie.
And again, and to my Indian friends, I think SRK reminds me a lot of Tom Cruise. And because there are sometimes you can put him in the film where it's good writing and it's good acting around him, and he shines like a star.
SRK or Tom Cruise?
Both of them. Both.
Right. This was the case for Tom Cruise.
Yes, but you can also put him in a film where there's not that.
Pretty much everything else for Tom Cruise.
And it's you're like, it's okay,
Yeah.
I won it because I liked Tom Cruise, or it was an action film or whatever.
See, I watched Valkyrie because I love history, and I knew about that plot to kill Hitler, and so, von Stauffenberg was who Cruise played, and so I wanted to see the movie for that reason. And so it was a pleasant surprise that Tom Cruise actually did a decent job, because I don't care for him as an actor.
What did you think about just real quick the scene in Valkyrie where he salutes, he does the Heil Hitler with no hand?
That was so awesome. That was so compelling because basically it says, look what I have given up. I've given up everything for you, like almost life and definitely limb. And then he did end up giving his life, not for Hitler but because of Hitler. Yeah, it was absolutely awesome. He gave up everything, and it was almost like, what more do you expect of me? Okay, so you want me to Heil Hitler, and I don't even have a hand. Okay, here you go. Here's my stump. Yeah.
I would say in this closing mark, and then we're going to move on to another video, is I would encourage my Russian friends to go see Patton, because I think it's going to give you insight into kind of America... culture, American ideology.
Minus the craziness of I was reincarnated and fought in all these battles.
But I think with Patton, what you saw was the American attitude towards Russia that we were raised in, with his kind of mistrust of them. I think you would also find it interesting if you're a Russian watching this, because you see some aspects of your culture that are depicted towards the end of the film, where they're having the celebration. And I would be curious to know from a Russian, how accurate was that? If somebody who was a World War II buff saw the Russian dancing, how accurate was it? Who did they think that the woman battalion was? Was it the Night Witches? Was it, one of the other, heroic female Russian heroes? And who was the general? Because I'm not, all I know is Zhukov, and I'm sure there were more generals than that. I know somebody pointed out, Zhukov is okay, but this is the guy, boom, 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 boom.
But you're always going to have that. Even in America, there were people who did not like Patton, because to them, General MacArthur was the one who was the real hero, because he ended up being a 5-star general. And he was crazy too. But again, a brilliant strategist.
I shall return.
And then there was General Eisenhower, General Bradley, both 5-star generals. And of course, Eisenhower, led the invasion of Normandy and would go on to be our president, later on, about 10 years after the war. But there were Americans that had their favorite generals too, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that there are Russians who like Zhukov, and I know we're not saying that proper as far as the Russians would say it. That's how we say it here. There are Russians who don't care for him, because they have other generals, and there are Russians who say, yes, he was a hero, just like we have in America with our various generals. So.
All right, well, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. We're getting close to capturing the Bali capturing. Yes, just like Jabby, we're going to capture the
Right.
Bali fools.
That would be a
And
lot.
yes, we'll have 3 of them back
Yeah.
here. And please subscribe and check out the website, the internet radio station, Dark Sky Radio. It's darkskyradio.com. To my Russian friends, I have a Leningrad concert on. It's like an hour and a half. Great stuff. I don't know what they're saying, but I like how they say it. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.